Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with me is my sis.
Click it 000.
And we're going to be talking about Avengers Endgame, which, thanks to the generosity of a friend of mine over on Facebook, you know who you are, we were gifted tickets to go see this, and it was a long time coming, like almost 3 weeks after the release, but we saw it, and what did you think of it?
Oh my god, I am in love with this movie.
It was
Spec fantastical.
I mean, you have to think 22 films that, it all amounted to from the very first Iron Man movie
Yeah.
with Robert Downey Jr., which it when it came out, Iron Man and a lot of the Marvel characters weren't well known, and they could have very much floundered the whole thing, but because they got an actor like Robert Downey Jr. and all of the cast of that film, Jeff Bridges, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jon Favreau directing, and also, playing a Happy, sort of, Tony Stark's assistant, it just did so well. It set the ball rolling for this entire cinematic universe of all these characters, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, Nick Fury, all this kind of stuff. And it's just grown and expounded, and it, going back to, it's like 10 years, 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, this all began, and I don't think we ever would have had any idea that it would build up to this.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm not really a fan of Scarlett Johansson, but in this movie, she blew me away. She actually did a really good job as Black Widow. I was really impressed.
And for her character to be willing to sacrifice herself in the way both she and Hawkeye, as his different personalities, so to speak, Ronan, in the aftermath of losing his family and losing his mind, arguably, but for it to come down to the love they had for each other as sort of non-marital, non-romantic, familial kind of love, that she was willing to throw herself off that cliff for the Soul Stone that they needed for all of this purpose of undoing what Thanos had done.
Yeah,
was pretty astounding.
I really got misty-eyed at that point.
And I was left with, as I touched base with in a previous video I put up talking about the timelines and everything, one of the long-standing overhanging questions I had is if she's going to still get her own movie. How is that going to happen? How are they going to bring her back, or what's going to happen with that? Because even if that stone was returned by Captain America at the end of the movie with time travel, there are no takebacks. Gamora was killed in Infinity War by Thanos himself in the same fashion. Even though we see her in this movie, it's a past version of her. It's not the same version.
Yeah.
So they didn't bring back the Gamora we knew. They brought back an alternate version of her in certain estimations. And so similarly with Black Widow now, it's going to be a question that I'm going to be really just sort of chomping at the bit to figure out how they're going to do that. But I mean, let's talk about the big players in the film, which, I mean, everybody is, and this film has everybody from every Marvel movie that shows up toward the end of this thing. But I mean, hands down for me, the two momentous characters portrayed by the two momentous actors were the top tier of Captain America and Iron Man.
Yeah.
Both of whom they've been on this journey where they've clashed in the past. We go back to Civil War, which you have yet to see, actually.
Yeah, I saw that.
I really love the respect and admiration that came to the fore in the aftermath of this tragedy that was at the hands of Thanos, the Thanos snap, as it's called, where he wiped out half of existence, for all intents and purposes, for Cap and Tony to sort of finally find each other and make amends and come back together as Avengers, I
was blown away, like, when I saw the end of the last movie before we saw Endgame. Like, when they was getting all disintegrated, I was like, holy crap, man.
Like we saw at the start of Endgame, they picked up with Hawkeye, Barton's family, and, 1 minute they're there, the next minute he turns around, they're gone.
That was freaky when they was playing ball and had the picnic.
Yeah, it almost felt like just in case you forgot, if you're just tuning in now, this is what happened all across the planet. It even reached Barton's family and everything like
It
that.
felt like a Twilight Zone moment. It was like, holy crap.
Oh yeah, and that's I mean, the vibe, setting up the vibe of the film and the sort of both highly dramatic yet somewhat kooky time travel or dimensional travel. I loved that. One of my favorite scenes. I love that scene where they're talking about, like, don't think of this as all of Hollywood's estimations have always been, from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to Back to the Future to this, that, and the other thing. And then Ant-Man's like, oh, what about Die Hard? Oh, no, wait, that wasn't a time travel movie. But I loved all those references. Quantum Leap was in there, and it was speaking to my geekdom because I freaking love time travel.
Heck yeah, me too.
And I loved a lot of those things they listed.
Speaking of time travel, I love the part where they figure out the time travel and he's going back in time and he keeps coming back as like the older man.
Yeah.
And then the kid, and he's like, somebody, my other self peed my pants, like either the baby or my older self.
Yeah, because they, like, Tony Stark had it figured out that if they tried to approach it in this way, it would be self-contained time travel within the suit rather than them actually physically being able to traverse time. So it was warping his age, making him super old, making him super young. And it was hilariously edited together that way. I thought that was pretty cool. And by the way, that's kind of an answer to if they ever want to bring back Cap, now that at the end of the movie he's old man Captain America. I mean, put him in a suit and warp the time travel and de-age him. You could do it in a wink, and a nudge.
That was super sweet to have him go back and stay with her. That made me misty-eyed too.
And the really cool thing is, since the movie's been out, the directors and writers of the movie have said, going back to one of the previous Captain America movies where he goes and visits Peggy in the modern day and she's really old and she passes away. And he finds out that she had settled down and married and had 2 children. And so some people have reacted to the idea that he went back in time and got with her. Did he then undo the marriage she had and the children she had? And the directors and writers have said, no, he was the husband all along. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy, time travel-wise. He went back and took his place as he was always meant to be that husband, and it's their children that they would go on to have. And then there's also the idea that, oh, well, if, Cap has children, maybe they're superheroes or maybe they work for S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that they could explore in a future movie. But it was such a sweet and satisfying moment, and I think it was done expertly to end the film that way because you just came off of Tony Stark's funeral, his sacrificial act, and that was a punch to the gut and completely had the tears rolling. Man. Especially with Tom Holland's Spidey being there. If you look at that scene at the end of Infinity War, the previous movie, it was Tony holding, Spidey and that father-son sort of, dynamic between them, and Tony couldn't forgive himself for letting that happen, and that's what fueled him in this movie.
I can't believe that, he's gone now. Iron Man is dead. It's like, oh man.
It's such an impactful, crazy thing.
Unless, of course, they trick us and it's a red herring, and they I doubt they will, but they pull a time travel thing where they can bring him back.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a science fiction movie and concept. They could nobody stays dead in comics or movies. And there's also the potential for in talking about how could Tony come back. There's already been talk, because it's been done in the comics, where he could be a sort of virtual AI. He doesn't necessarily come back from the dead, come back to life, but he still exists through this AI construct kind of thing, kind of like what he has, helping to operate his suits and stuff like that. Yeah. And I love that idea as well. I mean, but the life-altering, if you will, nature of all of these films, of all of these actors who gave such great performances, and they've become part of our lives, much in the same way as old television programs, and even to this day, TV. It's in your home, and you feel like every one of these characters, every one of these actors has just they're indelible to the characters, but not in like a typecasted way where we'll never be able to look at Downey Jr. again and not think of Tony Stark necessarily. He's such a great, renowned actor. He's already got like Sherlock Holmes under his belt and other characters he's played. One of my all-time favorites was his portrayal of Charlie Chaplin in the film Chaplin. And it's not like any of these actors or actresses are going to be typecast, but at the same time, they've put their indelible touch on these characters. They've brought them to life. And we've spent the better part of a decade with them so that, when you see, like at the end of Infinity War, I didn't necessarily feel the full impact of it because I felt like they already tipped their hats that time travel might be involved and that was a way they could bring everyone back. Of course, I had said at the time, I'd stipulated that I'm not going to say all bets are off and the next movie, meaning Endgame, not knowing what the title was going to be, I didn't say it was going to be horrible. I said it depended on how they went about bringing everyone back, if they could, how they went about it, if they should go about it. And just every aspect of this movie, from the comic beats to the drama to the action, like they largely saved the action for the big set piece at the end.
Yeah.
Even though we did have little, like the skirmish between the two Captain Americas, the one from the present and the one from the past.
Is that the scene where Loki steals the thing and flashes? That was like genius. That was like, oh crap, man.
And the hilarious thing about that is
leaves room for Loki to come back.
He's actually getting his own like TV series.
Oh my god.
And so that is immediately a shoe in the door as to how that's going to happen because in Infinity War he was killed by Thanos.
Oh yeah.
But now, so with this Loki roaming around out there, he's back in a sense.
He's free roaming.
Yeah, I love in that scene. They tell Hulk he can't get on the elevator; he's got to take the stairs.
Yeah.
And the whole time
he's bitching about it. The stairs.
And it's really his fault that they lose the Tesseract and Loki gets away with it. Because he comes crashing out and like runs headlong right into Tony in disguise.
Yeah.
But I loved the, to borrow from Doctor Who, the timey-wiminess of this film. Going back to things we'd already seen before, like in Thor: The Dark World, when Thor, who is Big Lebowski Thor in this movie, which was absolutely hysterically hilarious every step of the way. And I love the fact I think it's Tony calls him Lebowski at one point in the movie.
Yeah, he does. He's like something Lebowski.
Yeah, but we had that really heartening reunification between Thor and his mother, who in that movie they were calling back to, The Dark World, she dies on that day.
Yeah.
And her perceptibility, she said because she was raised by witches, she could tell that while he was her son, it wasn't the son she knew. Like she knew something was off, but it gave this really heartful, meaningful, reunion between them. And like that's what I'm saying. There's so many moments like that. The reunification of Ant-Man with his daughter, who the last he saw of her just 5 hours previously, she was a little girl.
Yeah.
And here she is a teenager now because he's been out of the loop for 5 years. Or I mean, for him it was 5 hours within the quantum realm. Yeah. But it was 5 years for everyone else.
I can't believe the evil of Thanos. Like when what's her name in the movie? Nebula, that Gillen's.
Yeah.
That moment when he pulled that thing out of her head.
Like siphoning her memories and everything.
That was evil, man.
Because you had the two Nebulas coexisting.
Yeah.
The one from the present day or future.
And then when you see her bind it up and he's got like the light flashing through her eye and he's trying to see what she's.
It's he's given so much depth, but I mean, it's tragic how. It's almost the abusive relationship thing in a father-adopted-daughter way, where all she lives for is appeasing him and pleasing him.
It's never good enough for him. She's
in Infinity War, as we just said, he did that to Gamora, the daughter he had much more affection for.
She's dirt to him. He doesn't, respect her.
And it's evil and it's twisted, and there's still such a depth and realism. I have to give kudos once again, touching base with one of the performers, Josh Brolin, who played Thanos.
Yeah.
Who gave him that depth and gravitas. I mean, it's also written there on the page, no doubt, but without his performance, I don't think he would have been so compelling.
He could be the nicest guy in the world, but that character convinced me he was an evil SOB.
Yeah, really.
I was like, whoa.
And that's a testament to actors who portray these characters. Yeah. I love Chris Evans's portrayal of Captain America. He's probably my favorite character out of all of the MCU for his moral values and his reserved nature, which in this movie we see a Captain America. This was another point I touched base on in my brief video talking about the timelines. You know, he's off the cuff in this movie. He's been through it and seen it and done it, and it's like all bets are off now.
Yeah.
Who gives a damn anymore? He's throwing curses left and right, and he's just ready by the end, especially with the cap on the bottle, no pun intended, of losing Tony Stark in the way that he did, and Natasha, you know, Black Widow. All the losses they had already sustained, even though they brought everyone back for all intents and purposes, they still didn't bring everyone back. You still don't have Vision there. You still don't have Black Widow there, and things like that. And it's not a perfect resolution. It's as good as it can be. And Tony had told him, you know, at some point you have to live for yourself. You should make at least one decision for yourself to find happiness and satisfaction for yourself. In all the years of having been selfless and this hero. And finally, by the end of the movie, that time travel, going back and being with Peggy, that's what he did. He finally lived up to that guidance, that warning that Tony had given him, because at that point, again, he'd been there, he'd done it. He'd been the perfect soldier, the perfect superhero. He needed one day to take for himself. He needed that R&R. And it's no grander feat what they were able to do with this Endgame film. You know, Endgame not only in name, but as an actual legitimized realization of the end of what they now call the Infinity Saga.
There's just no words to describe this movie. It was just awesome.
Or, well, there are words, but you'd have to get out a thesaurus of all the, superlatives that you could come up with.
In my book, no pun intended, there are not enough words to describe the amazement and beauty of this movie. Like,
not only the performances and the casting, but talking about the beauty, the visual,
that's
the cinematic
I
beauty.
couldn't think of the word, but yeah, the visuals, like, oh my god, like the little village.
Yeah,
and,
Thor's new Asgard and it's a fishing village now, and
yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome.
And revisiting those elements from the previous movies, like I said, from going back to the very first Avengers movie, The Battle of New York, which was probably the most fun timey-wimey jump. Again, Thor: The Dark World, where Thor reunited with his mother, and then the opening of Guardians, when we see Peter Quill for the first time, and he's jamming on that planet. He's going to get the one stone, and Nebula and War Machine are there to take him out for the count. Yeah. And the new additions, like, you know, or newer additions, even though Tom Holland's Spider-Man has been around a little while, he's still kind of new in the MCU, and we're going to see more of him in Far From Home. Which really has me stoked and excited. But like Captain Marvel, as of the time of this recording, we still both have yet to see Captain Marvel, her own origin movie, but I was stoked to see the role she fitted into in this movie. And I know some people have complained, like, oh, she was there at the start of the movie and then she wasn't there for the rest of the movie, then she came back toward the end. But she's an interstellar character, kind of like Green Lantern in the DC universe. He's going to be off-planet.
Then, of course, lest we forget, we have the naysayers of, a female.
Yeah, that's why you got that scene where all of the surviving female characters in the grand battle at the end, they were all in the one scene together. Like Wasp was in there, and Scarlet Witch was there, and just all of them. Captain Marvel led the charge, and I think that's why you had a scene like that in this film, was kind of giving the finger to all the misogynist naysayers and stuff like that. But I was stoked. I mean, in the aftermath of just that scene alone, I've heard people talking about, we want an A-Force movie. What is an A-Force movie, you may ask, if you don't know? That would be an all-female cast film, where they're the main cast of characters rather than, you know... And I am from day one, as someone who was raised by a very strong mother and has a very strong sister in my life, sitting here next to me chatting up this movie. I'm all for, that idea of women's empowerment.
You know what? It's not about men or women. It's about equality and working together. So
Yeah,
that's what these movies promote, working together.
exactly. All these characters are equal, and they're on a level playing field, and it doesn't matter what the genders are. They're going to come to your aid and your rescue as the heroes and heroines they are. And but at the end of the day, it was a singular achievement, a great, fantastic, spectacular achievement on the part of everyone involved, both on camera and behind the scenes, the writers, producers, everyone involved in this film. It was absolutely brilliant and amazing. And that end cap, no actual post-credit scene, but we got Tony Stark's slamming the hammer against the armor, going all the way back to the first Iron Man. It felt like such a brilliant, beautiful soliloquy of what began this whole journey with that humble little Iron Man movie.
I loved the very end when you see all the heroes coming against, and Thanos gets a taste of his own medicine.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, Thanos and all his evil, freaky people get a taste of their own medicine. They start disintegrating, and Thanos is freaking out, and it's like, oh God, yes.
And then he just sits down calmly, and he's like, "Well, it's time to take my medicine." It was amazing, man.
Take what's coming to you, boy.
It was a decade in the making, and it delivered on all cylinders. I think, as I mentioned this elsewhere, I only had two minor gripes overall. The only gripes I had were I did not particularly care for the young de-aged Hank Pym in the flashback to the 70s.
Yeah, that was kind of stupid.
That did not look to me like Michael Douglas at all. His face it didn't look right to me, and it didn't look like Michael Douglas.
The hair, it looked like he had a mop on his head.
Well, yeah, it was supposed to be the 70s, so whatever, but
Man.
I didn't think that was well rendered, and apart from that, the only other thing was the line of dialogue toward the end where Cap says, "Avengers assemble." Now, this should have been a really resounding, line of dialogue, and I got the point of it. I got the gist of it because it's the Valkyrie cry. We're going to go kick Thanos' ass. And then they proceed to do that very thing.
Yeah.
But he says it, and at least to my thinking, when you say assemble, you're telling your troops to get together and get ready for the battle. And he says it after everyone had already lined up behind him.
They was already ready.
Yeah, they were already assembled. I mean, he has to say it because that's the thing Captain America says.
Of course, but still.
But if they had just done it a beat before, everyone had already assembled behind him.
Man, come on.
Like as soon as he said it, I got the impact of it, but I also sort of sneered because I was like, but they're already assembled, dude.
I know. I was so impressed until that part. It's like, oh, shoot.
So, yeah, I guess that will be it from both of us on Avengers Endgame. Again, just shooting the breeze off the top of our heads, having a quick discussion about how great and amazing this movie was.
And I'm hoping we can actually go see it again.
Yeah, at some point we definitely have to.
Oh, God.
It was dope.
I would love to.
Yeah, it's going to be dope to see what the next chapter of the Marvel Cinematic Universe beholds for us. The sort of last leg, even though Endgame is the pseudo Endgame, there's still going to be ramifications of it in the next Spider-Man movie, and that is said to be the actual final chunk of the puzzle of this whole Infinity Saga. So whatever they're going to do next, now that they have gotten the rights that Fox was holding of all the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and they're playing with multiverses, I mean, it's no better time to be a Marvel Cinematic fanboy and to want to see what's going to come next. And so with that, I guess that'll wrap up this discussion. Thank you for tuning in. If you stayed with us all the way to the end, virtual cookie goes out to you right now, you the viewer and listener. And be sure to let us both know in the comments what you thought of Avengers Endgame and all that good stuff. Love it or hate it. Any qualms, any celebratory aspects you want to discuss, feel free to do that in the comments below.
Be respectful, of course. No fighting.
Yeah, no civil wars amongst my viewers here. And but yeah, so that'll be it from us on this. Hope this video finds you well, and we will catch you all later.
Peace.